很高兴可以在这个华山充满这个艺术气息跟这个设计创新氛围的地方跟各位见面。我是台湾宇舶表的业务总监 Daniel。那宇舶表一直以来一直推崇的这个创新、研发跟融合的艺术。那在2015年的巴塞尔表展上，我们首次将这个科技的碳纤维材质跟这个优雅的蕾丝刺绣，我们把它融合，做了完美的演绎，做了一款新的这个女装的这个新的女生的 Big Bang 腕表。那在当年，我们也就获得了这个 GPHG 最佳的女表的殊荣。那今天呢，我们也特别邀请到了这个瑞士圣加仑刺绣工坊的设计总监Rachel 来到这里，跟大家介绍这个我们刺绣工坊，让各位可以更了解刺绣工坊平常一窥究竟。来，我们欢迎 Rachel。
I'm very happy to welcome you here to the story of the Big Bang embroidery watch. I am a designer of embroidery for more than 20 years now, and I'm really pleased to tell you how the Big Bang embroidery was born. But that you understand why this watch was so particular and so exceptional, you need to know a little bit more about the story and the history of Switzerland and the embroidery. So maybe you know a few things about Switzerland. I'm quite sure that you know that we are a beautiful country. We have a lot of nice mountains and lakes, and we are a very small country. We speak 4 languages. And you surely know we are quite a rich country as well. We have a stable money. We have very delicious chocolate. And surely you know we have very good cheese. But Switzerland is not only this. Switzerland has 2 very important regions. The French-spoken part, where you can see here, that's Geneva. Where they have for more than several hundred years the know-how of the watchmaking industry. And by the way, it was the first good which was exported to China. But just at the opposite, the other hand side of Switzerland, in the German-spoken part, especially in the east of Switzerland, we have a city called St. Gallen, where I originally come from and where I work and where I live. And that's the capital of the embroidery. So something really nice is relying you to Switzerland, which is that in the 12th century, the cotton came via the Silk Road to Switzerland. And in St. Gallen, people were very strong in making cotton fabrics, cotton wool and muslin, and salesmen, they traveled all over the world in the 16th, 17th, 18th century to sell this cotton-based fabric. And in the 17th century, they arrived in Lyon in France, and they saw for the first time their women doing hand embroidery. And that's how the hand embroidery came to Switzerland. And in very short time, in every family, everybody was doing hand embroidery in St. Gallen, but it didn't stay as a hand embroidery. They made an industry out of it, and the first embroidery machine was founded in 1823, and this was by a Swiss guy, of course, and you can see this was the first embroidery machine, and these are archives pictures. So at this time, a huge amount of embroidery companies were founded in St. Gallen, and the second embroidery machine a little bit later, in 1868, was founded as well by a Swiss guy in St. Gallen. So you can really say that St. Gallen is the place of birth of machine embroidery. So we have, of course, a huge archive and in our National Museum, but also in our private museum in Bischof. By the way, in the beginning of at the end of 19th and beginning of 20th century, embroidery were the most exported goods from Switzerland. Unfortunately, there was, at the beginning of the 20th century, the financial crisis and a lot of companies closed. And that was the moment where Bischof was founded, in 1927. Because Mr. Bischof was it's a family company and he was quite a funny guy. He loves risk and he could buy embroidery machines very cheap. So he took the chance and he founded the company. Now we have our headquarters in St. Gallen, that's the headquarters. We are about 80 people in St. Gallen. We have joint ventures in Thailand, Sri Lanka and in Turkey. And altogether we are about 900 people. Our products are embroidery for the lingerie market, and we supply a lot of high-end lingerie labels such as Simone Perel, Lis Charmel, La Perla, Lynn Lingerie, Chantel, Waco, Hanro, and so on. But of course we also do embroidery for the what we call prêt-à-porter de luxe or high-end outerwear and couture houses. And there you sure know a bit better all these names. We are working with big labels like Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Acris, Prada, Gucci, Lella Rose, Armani, and so on. Oscar de la Renta, Stella McCartney, Alexander McQueen, and a lot more. Oh, sorry. So the idea was, before I have to explain about how the embroidery arrives from the first step to the sketch of the embroidery, which is my part of work, up to the embroidered fabric. So as a designer, we have to do the art school specialized in embroidery, and this is something which since more than hundreds of years is still a hand-done sketch. So we are still working with the charcoal to do our first sketches, but of course we need to know the technical instructions of the machine to be able to design embroidery. Then we have to computerize the sketch. And the third step, which is not my job anymore, is the technical design. And that's finally the part of the design which is very important, which guides the machine later on. Now we have different machines. You can see that we have 2, 5, 10 and 15 yard machines, so they are quite long. And you have to imagine that the embroidery of the skull for the Big Bang embroidery was embroidered on one of these big machines on a 15 yard. So this was a really big challenge for us to embroider such a small motif on such a huge machine and to be still that precise. Because textile is always moving a little bit on the machine. So in the watch, of course, we had to be really precise, and that was a very big challenge. When the embroidery comes back from production, we control it, of course. If necessary, we cut it out, and we do lab tests. Now I show you a film which has been realized. Which has been realized with Oscar de la Renta, who unfortunately died 2 years ago. We worked a lot with him, and we developed several different wonderful embroideries for him. And he did a film with us from the making of, from the first step to the last step on the runway. So you can see this is the technical part. When every stitch is designed in the machine, and finally that's the technical part which will guide the machine. You can see the following of the stitches, how the machine works. And that's quite a complicated part of the work, which demands a lot of know-how and a lot of time. So this sometimes is difficult to make people understand. It's not just design and embroidery and go on the machine. There is a step between which asks a lot of time. These are our 15-yard machines. You can see the repeat of the needles. So that means for me as a designer that the technical instructions, already when I design, I have to think about that, about the possibilities of what is able to be embroidered on our machines. This is what we call the repeat when we have not all needles embroidered. So for the big embroidery, it's called every second needle was working. Then you see also that there are a lot of technical manipulations as well with the threads, which meant for us a lot of difficulties also to handle the golden thread of the golden big band embroidery, because that's a real golden thread and a very delicate one. Of course, that's not the same. Then when you do a hand embroidery, you can work very slowly, so that's much easier to work with delicate threads. Here you see the controlling, and you see the lady controlling if there is after production any mistake in embroidery. They control this with this little hand machine. So you can imagine that when we have orders up to 5,000 meters of a large fabric, it takes quite a time to do this. And here you can see the final embroidery, which is embroidered on a base fabric, and later it will be washed out, the fabric. And you just have the embroidery left. And that's a very special technique from St. Gallen. This is in the showroom of Oscar de la Renta, just before the catwalk. That's Oscar de la Renta, and that's our beautiful embroidery, which is called a kipper embroidery. And of course that's always the nicest moment for us when we see our embroidery on the catwalk. But Bischoff also has a lot of demands for embroidery for celebrities, and that's a very funny part when we are asked to do an embroidery for film star or any celebrity or a politician or whatever, but we in general don't know for whom it is. So for instance, we did a few, that's just a few I'm showing you, of Winfrey, Reese Witherspoon, Megan Fox, Julia Roberts, Stella McCartney, Emma Jones, Charlene from Monaco. She's a big fan of St. Gallen embroidery. I did the wedding dress for Nicole Kidman as well. This is Sandra Bullock. And lately we did the wedding dress for Emma Clooney. And this was a great campaign with Valentino, and Ariana is wearing the Bischoff embroidery. So now we come to the watch Big Bang embroidery, because this was actually our motivation. We wanted to create a watch, a couture watch, to bring this embroidery, so to combine the know-how of the French-spoken part of watchmaking together with the know-how of embroidery making of St. Gallen to finally have the couture of the watch and to have a completely new watch which has this wonderful look. So how to get there was the question. And this was a long way. HUBLOT came to Bischoff and they just wanted to reach somehow this target of a couture watch. But we needed, of course, a third company called Bush Composite. They do high performance composite products for a lot of different things. They are working for longer time for Bush, and they do dial plates and bezel in their carbonizing process. Carbonizing process means that they have synthetic fibers, and under very high pressure and heat, the synthetic fibers become solid. And they are very good in that, but they never did this before with embroidery, so this was really the first time. And they had to start first with technical tests to know whether this is really possible or not. And of course, we had a lot of problems. The first one was that you have to imagine that this pressure and heat temperature was so high that a lot of threads, they could not stand this, and they crashed, or the fabric crashed, or you have also to know that embroidery is never completely flat. So there was always the problem that there were air bubbles built inside. And of course we couldn't absolutely not work with air bubbles, so that was another problem. And then the third problem was as well that we wanted really that everybody could recognize that it's an embroidery and not a print or something else. And with the heat and the pressure, certain techniques, they looked like painted afterwards. So that was the challenge, to find the right technique and the right temperature and the right pressure to have finally a protected embroidery, a solid and resistant embroidery for dial plate and bezel, but that it still looks textile and as an embroidery. So now, once we knew that it's going to be possible, that it's not going to be easy, but that it's going to be possible technically, there was the question, what should be the design? And at this moment, a design team of HUBLOT came to me and asked me, she said, well, we would love to have a really elegant but young, a bit a rebel watch. And they were thinking of a skull. And first, I have to say, I was a little shocked, because I was thinking, well, a skull, how can a skull really be very feminine? And they wanted the watch really to be feminine. And well, in the Occidental world, a skull is a symbol of caducity of human being, which is quite a tough subject. So I was not, at the first moment, I could not really imagine how the watch could be a feminine watch with such a tough subject. And so I did a bit my personal research as well, and I found the Mexican skull, where the meaning is actually completely different, because it's the symbol of immortality of the human soul, which suddenly has a completely different meaning and feeling to me. It is something optimistic. It's the symbol of the Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, where they do big party, and they honor the soul of the dead people. And that's why the Mexican skull is always very friendly, smiley, with a lot of colors in general, sun or flowers and leaves and cirrus. So quite a feminine subject. So I was reconciled with the skull and I thought, okay, I can imagine to work with that. And I started working. And I'm not going to show you, of course, all the sketches because these were more than 35 or something like this sketches. But just the very final one to explain you, we had two different designs. We had one for the strap and one for the dial plate and the bezel. And at the end, there was the discussion whether we should fill the skull out or not. Different techniques, stitches. Here you see also that at the beginning we thought of not embroidering the eyes because Hublot thought that they are going to put the second culture in the place of the eye. But when they tried this, they realized that actually you could not recognize anymore that it was a skull in the watch. So we changed that, and we finally decided to embroider the eyes as well. And this was the final design which was chosen. Once we had the design, we had to start with the first essays for the embroidery. This is the first embroideries essay with the 80 karat golden thread, which for us, as I explained before, was already a challenge to embroider with this thread. It worked, finally we managed, not too bad. You see there is the first trial with the carbonization process for the dial plate and the bezel. So they cut out in one motif the dial plate and in the other the bezel, and then they adjusted it. Here you can see very well that we had the problems of the air bubbles, so you see that there is some contouring around the embroidery, and of course we didn't want that. So again, we had some technical problems we had to solve. Then was always the question, what should be the base? And the first trials were on a silk organza base, and then it looked a bit too much like printed, and Hublot really wanted that you can recognize that it's a textile inside the watch, and that's why we applicated on the top a tulle. So you have the embroidery, you have the tulle, and you have a silk organza underneath. And at the end, we were always speaking and also speaking about carbonizing the strap, just to make it more resistant and more solid, because embroidery stays quite a delicate product. So they tried this, but Hublot really wanted to have this couture aspect and to have this textile aspect in the watch. So we decided to embroider the strap directly on a silk satin, to finally have the first 3 embroidered watches, golden, silver and black. Now, the next step was that we continued with the skull but in different colors, and we did several trials with a printed thread, an ombre thread in multicolor, and this was finally then chosen, the 3 colors multicolor, for Big Bang Broderie sugar skull. Now you see the film which Hublot realized with us, which explains again all the story and the making of the Big Bang Broderie.
So we got a copy from Hublot with the skull that we wanted to develop, and we had to adapt this into this very small piece of space we had. And for us this was really a big challenge because we are not used to work in such small dimensions. And this was really the difficulty also, that you could recognize that it was an embroidery and not anything else, no print or no lace, but really an embroidery. And that's why we had to try to include more technical stitches as possible. But on this small scale, this was really difficult. We are always interested in working with different fields and try to find out new ways of working. So this was very interesting for us to see another way of working and another approach on how you can use embroidery. And of course for us it's always interesting also to discover a new field of industry. I think there is one important commonality between fashion and watchmaking, which is to be deeply concerned about very high quality and creation.
The technical steps to make this piece for the Hublot watch, it's first we have to treat the fibers. Carbon fibers are made of carbonized acrylic filaments. That means they are treated with a temperature from 2000 degrees in nitrogen atmosphere. To use carbon fibers everywhere, we use lightweight and high material properties, like in the aerospace, medical equipment, motor, sports, and a lot of other uses. We have two textile materials, both are made of live fibers, but they are completely different in the handling and so processing. And it's a big challenge for us to use these materials in one piece. Is the center of the embroidery industry. Beginning of the 20th century, the St. Gallen embroidery industry has been the biggest export industry of Switzerland, and St. Gallen one of the richest cities. Bischof Textile is a family-owned company founded in 1927 about Switzerland, where we produce our high-end products. We also have factories in Thailand, Sri Lanka and Turkey.
Come from a discussion between our supplier, carbon fiber in Switzerland, and Hublot last year during the meeting. And I was immediately enthusiastic, and I imagined which product we could develop together. For me, this watch is feminine and provocative. This watch is unique and different, and finally, this watch is a Hublot watch.
This was the watch, and once the watch was done, of course, it was planned to be shown in the Basel World 2015, and we knew that Bar Raffaeli, the Israeli top model, would be the ambassador of this watch, and so we immediately created for her a dress with the same skull. So this was the design for the dress, for the fabric of the dress, of course, and this was the embroidery, and that was the dress she was wearing at the Basel World 2015. Bar Raffaeli has been chosen as the first feminine ambassador of Hublot because she stands for simplicity and elegance. And when I heard that it was Bar Raffaeli, I was very pleased because she was model as well for Passionata, the French lingerie brand, and Victoria's Secret, and already wearing different creations of Bischof. So Now, maybe you understand a little bit better why this watch is so exceptional. Because there is a perfect fusion between two know-hows. The know-hows of watchmaking and the know-how of embroidery, the two most important industries in Switzerland. And both of them, they gave the best of themselves. And as I'm always saying, you just can do a wonderful, beautiful product with a lot of love and a lot of passion. And both of us gave this. And I think that's the reason why the Big Bang Broderie Hublot watch won the prize of Grand Prix de l'Horlogerie de Genève in 2015. Now, I really do hope that you love this watch as much as I do. It's a very special watch, and I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
身边没有鲜肉物，对啊，一起来在车上。